The walls of Nineveh crumbled like dust before the storm. Fire devoured the stone temples. The palaces dissolved into ashes, and wailing echoed through the streets once filled with pride and arrogance. The raging river overflowed, carrying corpses and ruins, sweeping away the empty glory of an empire he believed immortal. The once feared king crawled in the darkness, betrayed by his servants, unable to resist the apocalypse that crushed his crown. Only judgment remained on a hilltop. Nahum stood firm. He had already announced the end. His voice had resounded like thunder in the heavens. Behold, I am against you, Nineveh. Your end has come. But no one listened. Now the city that had defied the Most High was unrecognizable, reduced to rubble by flames and waters. But what made Nineveh the target of divine judgment? What dark mystery lurked beneath its walls, guarded for generations in the city's depths? What was the secret buried in its foundations, so terrible that not even kings dared reveal it? Join us as we unravel the small but powerful book of the prophet Nahum, where the walls of Nineveh tremble, the cries of oppression echo, and God's justice is proclaimed without turning back. Prepare to discover the secret hidden beneath the ruins, the eternal reminder that no human arrogance can escape the Lord's judgment. Here begins the amazing story of Nahum, the judgment against Nineveh. The book of the vision of Nah, Nah 1. The name Nah means consolation or comfort, but ironically, his initial message was not one of relief, but of judgment. The Bible tells us only that he was from Elkosh, a village whose exact location has been lost over time. Some scholars believe it was in Galilee, others in Judea. There is no mention of his father, mother, siblings, or descendants. It is as if God had singled him out for a single mission to proclaim the fall of a city that seemed invincible. Nineveh, capital of the Assyrian Empire. The scene was grand. Nineveh rose like a colossus on the banks of the Tigris River. Its walls were impressive, wide enough for 3 chariots to run side by side. Soaring towers guarded the gates. The markets bustled with spices, fabrics, and metals from distant lands. Men and women circulated, displaying colorful clothing and gold and silver ornaments. It was a city of luxury, but also of cruelty. Soldiers displayed the heads of defeated enemies as trophies. Slaves moaned in the streets. Children begged for scraps of bread. It was there, amidst crowded squares and the sounds of a market, that now appeared. No one knew where he had come from. His dusty tunic and feet marked by the long walk revealed him to be a foreigner. He stopped in the middle of the crowd, took a deep breath, and raised his voice. Thus says the Lord, Nineveh will fall. The hubbub fell silent for a moment. Eyes turned to the thin man with the unkempt beard and burning eyes. Some frowned, others laughed out loud. Who is this stranger? A merchant shouted. Another madman who's lost his way, mocked another, drawing laughter from those passing by. But Nahum did not back down. His face remained firm, and his voice sounded like a hammer on stone. The Lord is slow to anger, but great in power. He will not acquit the guilty. Mountains tremble before him, rivers dry up at his command. Who can stand before his indignation? Some became irritated, women pulled their children away. Men gestured, trying to silence the preaching. But Nahum continued, unconcerned. Among the crowd, a child stood motionless. His large dark eyes were fixed on the stranger. It was Malach, the son of a poor potter. As the adults laughed, he felt his heart race. That voice seemed to carry invisible fire. Father, the boy murmured, tugging at the man's tunic. This man speaks differently. Shut up, Malach, his father replied impatiently. Don't listen to fanatics. Still, the boy did not look away. Each of Nahum's words seemed to pierce the air like an arrow. Nineveh, full of blood and lies. Your end is near, cried the prophet. Your flaming chariots will not save you. Your warriors will stumble on the day of wrath. The laughter turned into more aggressive taunts. Go away, stranger. Ah, a man shouted. The God of Israel can do nothing against Nineveh, added another. Nahum, however, raised his hand as if ordering silence. His voice became even more firm. I did not come of my own accord. The Lord sent me. He has already prepared the way for the destruction of this city. An uncomfortable silence fell over the square. Even the mockers felt a chill. The sun, once radiant, seemed to hide behind sudden clouds. The wind stirred dust. The boy Malach flinched, but his eyes shone. Father, he insisted in a low voice. What if it's true? The man sighed nervously. Don't talk nonsense. Nineveh will never fall. But Nahum continued, implacable. The Lord is good, a refuge in times of trouble. He knows those who trust in him, but he will destroy the place of this city with an overflowing flood. The crowd began to disperse, murmuring. Some shook their heads. Others laughed to hide their fear. Malach, however, stood still, unable to move. The prophet lowered his voice as if speaking only for a few to hear. The Almighty has already set the time, and no one can escape God's time. Malach felt goosebumps crawl across his skin. His father pulled him tightly by the arm. Let's go home before you get all these weird ideas. But the boy looked back, fixing his eyes on Nahum. The stranger seemed to know he was being watched. For a moment their eyes met. Malach shivered as if he'd been seen from within. Father, he murmured almost voicelessly. What if this man isn't crazy? What if it's God speaking through him? Father, why is everyone still dancing if the foreigner spoke of destruction? Because one man's words don't change the fate of an entire city. Malik, now come on. Don't talk about it anymore. Night fell over Nineveh. Torches illuminated the wide streets where musicians played flutes and drums. Women adorned with colorful veils danced. The smell of wine and roast beef filled the air. The people seemed to have forgotten the scene in the square. However, a persistent murmur spread from mouth to mouth. An outsider announced the end of the city. In the stone corridors of the royal palace, the rumor had already reached the gates. Servants whispered, guards whispered in secret, until finally the news reached the king. "Who is this man?" asked the monarch, frowning. "Where did he come from?" The chief guard lowered his head. "So they say his name is Nah, an Elashite, but no one really knows his origin." The king rose from his throne. His embroidered robes dragged across the marble floor. His narrow eyes reflected more unease than fury. "No," he repeated, as if tasting a strange name in his mouth. Then what did he announce? The guard took a deep breath. He said that Nineveh will fall, that our chariots and warriors will be powerless against the God of Israel. A heavy silence filled the hall. The counselors exchanged nervous glances. One of them, an older man, tried to divert attention. "Your Majesty, we have faced many peoples. There are always ragged prophets who predict ruin, and they all remain silent before the power of Assyria." But the king didn't seem convinced. He walked to the palace's high window. Below, the festivities continued. The sound of music echoed within the walls. Men laughed loudly, children ran. Wine overflowed from cups. Everything seemed solid, eternal. Still, those foreign words wouldn't leave the king's mind. "I want full reports," he ordered without turning around. "Follow this man. Find out where he sleeps, who he talks to, what he does for a living." The captain nodded. "We will do as you wish, sir." Meanwhile, in the city streets, Malik walked beside his father, still silent. The boy couldn't forget Nahum's gaze. "Father," he said softly. When he spoke, it seemed like the ground shook. "Didn't you feel it?" The father shook his head impatiently. "Ground tremor. It was just the wind. Don't let your imagination fool you." Yet, in many parts of the city, others were also whispering. Neighbors whispered through half-open doors. Merchants chattered in the night market. Even among soldiers, the story of the foreigner who shouted fearlessly spread in the palace. The king sat down again. His fingers tapped impatiently on the arm of the throne. An advisor dared to ask, "Your Majesty, do you fear the words of a single man?" The king sighed deeply. "I don't fear men, but I know that words are like seeds. If they fall on fertile soil, they grow and change people. We can't ignore them." Night fell. Nineveh's walls guarded the city like sleeping giants. Outside, the Tigris River flowed silently. Inside, music hid anxieties that grew like wildfire. And Malik, lying on his little mat, still whispered to himself, unable to sleep, "Who is this Nahum?" At the same moment, at the top of the palace, the king called his guards again. "Bring me news of him before sunrise. I want to know every step of this prophet. What if the walls begin to echo your words louder than our parties?" "So, is it too late to keep quiet?" "My lord, it's late when the heart learns to listen, Captain." Dawn settled over Nineveh like a damp cloth. The torches on the wall burned in scattered spots, and the wind blowing in from the river carried the scent of clay, old wine, and wood smoke. Inside the palace, the king walked slowly, feeling that the cold ancient stones of the floor held forgotten footsteps. Outside, the city no longer sang so loudly. There was laughter, yes, but mixed with whispers. Nahum's was repeated in corridors, marketplaces, and courtyards like an echo that insists on returning. "The foreigner is still in the squares," the captain said, keeping his head down. "We watch from afar. He says little, but when he does, the men stop to listen." The king stopped near a column. "What words carry so much weight?" "He says that the earth remembers the blood it received and that the Lord does not forget." "Ah, the earth. Remember." The king touched a stone with his hand, almost in a questioning gesture. In the potter's neighborhood, a young woman swept the floor of her house with a straw broom. Her name was Samira. Her eyes were lively and she knew the city by its sounds. The flute of the cloth merchant, the baker's cry at dawn, the heavy footsteps of soldiers. When she heard the rumors about the prophet, she felt a cold she couldn't understand. Her father, Hiram, kept a dark wooden chest in the back of his room that no one touched. They said it was a keepsake of a distant relative who had died childless. "Father, why is that chest always locked?" "Because there are things that give neither bread nor peace." My daughter Samira didn't insist, but that night the wind blew hard and the door to the house groaned. The flame of the lamp flickered and the shadow of the chest seemed to grow on the wall. She took a deep breath, approached and touched the padlock. It was cold as iron and water. She turned her eyes to her sleeping father and her little brother huddled under a blanket. The silence weighed like stone. In the square, Nahum spoke simply. "The earth drank the tears of slaves, mothers, and children. You think the earth sleeps, but the earth has memories. The grain you eat brings memories. The wine you sip preserves the groans of the harvest harvested by force. The Lord hears because the ground cries out." Some laughed wearily, others pursed their lips. Malik, the market boy, approached silently. He stood beside a low column. his hands hidden in his sleeves. The prophet's eyes fell on him and the boy felt as if the square itself were breathing. "Boy," said Nahum, "what do you learn when everyone pretends there is nothing to learn?" "One learns to be afraid," Sir Malik replied timidly, "and to be silent. So today, you learn something else. Fear doesn't need to own your mouth." The words ran down the street like water. An elderly man leaning against the wall began to tremble. A woman held her face in both hands. A merchant dropped the beads. He was twirling between his fingers. The air seemed heavy. Samira, alone in the house, knelt before the chest. The padlock clicked, making her flinch. She wanted to call out to her father, but something she couldn't quite put her finger on whispered inside her, "Open." She pushed the lid open. The smell of old leather and dried ink rose like a memory. Inside, scrolls of parchment wrapped in cloth awaited the touch of someone bold. With trembling hands, he unwrapped the first scroll. Firm, almost hard letters ran from one side to the other. He read slowly, his lips moving soundlessly. Names, dates, lists of sacked cities, tributes, people taken captive. Further on, another more hurried hand had left notes in the margin. "We silenced those who asked for water. We sealed the mouths of those who wept." The king was pleased. Samira clapped her hand over her mouth. The next parchment bore broken wax seals. It was a household record belonging to her father's grandfather. It told of a night many years ago when soldiers had taken foreign boys to work in the Britkill. One of them had burned to death. The scribe had noted, "I didn't tell the council." The body was thrown into the river. The young woman felt the room spin. She heard the wind knocking at the door, heard her father sleep, heard the creak of a tile outside, and at the same time she heard the prophet's words mixed with her own breathing. "The earth has memory. The earth has memory." In the palace, the king was still waiting. The elderly counselor spoke. "Sir, tomorrow's party will be bigger than today's. This will confuse the people. No one will remember the stranger." "Perhaps," said the king in a dry voice. "But what if memory is not in people, but in stones?" The captain cleared his throat. "We've heard of private records in old houses. Families keep accounts of campaigns and punishments. If a foreigner brings them to light, there will be a murmur." "Search," the king ordered. "I want to know if Nineveh is keeping any papers that accuse us." In the potter's neighborhood, Samira closed her eyes and cried silently. She picked up another scroll. On it, a simple drawing showed a well with handprints along the edges. Beside it, the words, "The waters were dark for 3 days." The young woman heard her own voice, low as if speaking to someone absent. "So that's why Mom got sick in the summer." In the square, Nahum raised his arm. "The Lord is patient, but he's not blind. He sees the hidden notebooks, the unpaid bills, the wells that have drunk more than water. When he speaks, the walls will hear. And when the walls hear, you cannot pretend you didn't hear." Malik moved closer. "Sir, what will we do if it is true? First, stop laughing at what should make you cry. Then remember, and then decide where our strength belongs." Distant thunder rolled over the city, though the sky was clear. Torches flickered. A dog barked 3 times and then suddenly fell silent. The guards in the towers glanced at each other uneasily. Samira carefully wrapped the scrolls, put them back, and closed the chest. She knelt for a while, hands in her lap, feeling her heartbeat. He got up, walked over to his father and touched his shoulder. "Dad, we need to talk." Hiram opened his heavy eyes. "About what, my daughter?" "About what we left hidden inside this house." The king from above looked down at the city as if looking into a mirror. He saw shadows moving, saw weary joy, saw the false shine of gold. He thought of rivers during floods when they swallowed their banks without asking permission. He thought of names he had never spoken aloud. He remembered childhood stories. A guardian said that the walls on moonless nights breathed like a tired animal. He also said that the ground holds voices trapped beneath the stones, waiting for an ear willing to listen. "It's scary, yes." Nahum bowed his head as if in prayer, and his voice was low but firm. "Land of Nineveh, return what you have kept. Return the tears you drank. The Lord has heard." Hiram sat up in bed, waking up completely. "Samira, what secrets do you carry in your eyes? The secrets that the earth has grown tired of keeping." "Father," the king spoke again in a whisper that only the captain heard. "What if the papers start screaming?" "Then, my lord, perhaps it is not the papers." "What then?" "Maybe it's the earth itself asking for someone to finally respond." Before we continue, we ask for your support. Subscribe to the channel and leave a like. This helps us continue to bring powerful messages like that of Nahum the prophet, who announced that the seemingly invincible city would be reduced to ashes and that the oppressed people would finally claim victory. Now, let's move on to the fall of Nineveh and the revelation that changes everything. If the earth demands an answer, daughter, who will dare to speak for it? Someone who isn't afraid of the past. Dad. The day dawned pale over Nineveh. The wind brought dust and the smell of clay. Samira stood before the closed ark. Harun watched her silently, his hands on his knees. Nahum's words still pounded inside like a hammer. There were things unsaid in that house now demanding entry. "I need to understand what these rolls hide," said Samira. "Understanding hurts," Hiram replied, "and what hurts sometimes destroys. What really destroys is the lie we keep." There is a man who can help. Hiram relented. He's old. He writes in the temple. His name is Asher. He wants truth, not embellishment. In the courtyard of the scribes, low tables waited. Asher sat in the shade of a fig tree. His hair was like wet wool. His eyes listened to what no one said. Peace, Asher, Hiram said. My daughter has found records that trouble me. Peace, said the old man. Records are disturbing when they are alive. Let them breathe. Samira held out the package. Asher smelled the leather, touched the broken wax, and opened the first scroll. He read slowly, silently, like someone measuring the weight of a stone. These names bleed, he murmured. I didn't know, Samira said. I just heard the square, and my memory came back. Memory is a river that finds its bed, said Asher. What are you looking for? True, Hiram replied. And perhaps forgiveness. Forgiveness without truth is like ink on water, said the scribe. First comes the light, then comes the healing. He opened another scroll. Expeditions, tributes, chiefs, neighborhoods, dry notes, 40 men in the ditch, 3 silent mothers, well closed. Samira felt her face heat up. My grandfather wrote part of it, Hiram said, embarrassed. The living inherit the voice of the dead, Asher said. Decide the tone. Why did you hide? Asked Samira. Because power fears the mirror, Asher replied. There are crimes that prefer to sleep in chests. He closed his eyes for a moment and his voice returned lower. Samira, your name says she who tells what she saw. Maybe that's your job. But there are dangers. What dangers? The ruling lineage carries an ancient curse ignited by unprosecuted massacres. When unconfessed, it sweeps through homes like the wind that knocks down lamps. I turned pale. How do you know that? Because I wrote it when I could still say what I saw. Then they told me to forget it. I didn't forget. The courtyard fell silent. Does curse mean we're trapped? Samira asked. Trapped by the truth we have avoided, said the scribe. The city has made a feast of bones. The Lord does not accept a dance that covers blood. The foreigner has only announced what rots. But if I burn the scrolls, Hiram tried to run away. You will burn the paper, not the memory, Asher said. The earth preserves more than ink. Better to open the wound than leave the poison. What should I do? Asked Samira. Listen, read aloud. Let the houses hear their names, but prepare your heart. When the truth comes to light, the city trembles. Asher tied the scrolls together and returned the bundle. Then he bowed low. There's more. There's a notebook that never reached the king. I kept it when I was young. It's the missing piece. Where is it? Hiram stepped back. On the roof of the palace, between beams and mud, a friend left it there the night of the last uprising. He died the next day. They thought everything was on fire. It wasn't. If it turns up, no one will say, we didn't know. Samira felt her heart pound in her throat. She imagined herself beneath the rafters with dust in her eyes. Why me? Because you have clean hands and steady eyes, Asher said. And you were the one who opened the ark. God begins with small gestures and entrusts greater things. Hiram pulled her daughter. Don't mess with the palace. It's a path to death. If we don't open it, who will? Samira whispered. Let the king decide the king. I do not ask for invasion. Asher raised his hand. I want them to know the price. If the truth comes out, the city will tremble. There will be cries in noble houses and weeping in poor courtyards. The curse does not remain silent when its name is spoken, and the foreigner asked Samira, You've already helped, said the scribe. By setting fire to the straw, you showed where the wind blows. The rest is the work of ordinary people. The old man got up with effort. Let's not talk here anymore. There are walls that listen. Come back at dusk. Just bring the scroll from the blocked well. Leave the others with me for a few hours. I'll compare them with old lists. Hiram hesitated. Shall we leave our writings in your hands? In mine? Yes. In the hands of fear. Nahum. Samira nodded. She put the package away and separated the stained roll. This one has watermarks, Asher said. It was written with tears. The morning wore on. In the palace, messengers came and went. The king asked for brief, repeated reports. In this square, Nahum walked silently and Malik followed him. When the sun went down, Samira returned. Asher drew a small map in the dust. Here's the servants' corridor. Here's the narrow staircase. This beam, a hand-sized crack in the clay. The notebook must be there if time hasn't eaten it away. What if the guards see? Guards see what shines. You will be shadow. Hiram appeared, panting. I can't stop you. I'll go with you as far as my legs will take me. Courage is not shouting, said Asher. It is walking. The night deepened. The palace rose like stone. There were dark corners between torches. Asher stopped before the secondary gate and touched Samira's shoulder. If you find the notebook, don't read it. Don't even celebrate it. Come down and come to the fig tree. The heart screams loudly when it whines, and the palace loves listeners. Samira took a deep breath. Malik, who had been following them secretly, leaned against a wall. The captain on patrol passed slowly, his eyes on the shadows. Hiram took his daughter's hand. If you feel afraid, squeeze my hand. What if I'm not afraid? Tighten it anyway so I don't fall. Now, said Asher, pointing to the stairs. They took the first step toward the beams. The wood groaned. A raven flapped its wings in the tower. The wind blew off the river. The palace breathed like a tired animal. The steps were uneven. Asher taught the servants a short rhythm so their steps wouldn't sound strange. Samira counted 1, 2, pause. 1, 2, pause. The smell of cold clay entered her nose, reminiscent of the blocked well. She saw the cruel phrase. The waters turned dark. She felt small but firm. If the notebook exists, there will be names, Asher said, almost voiceless. Names spark memory, and memory sparks justice. Justice frightens those who love only their own home, Nahum murmured. I'm tired of walking crooked. A torture head crackled. The light cast long shadows. They looked like arms reaching for the crack. Samira thrust her fingers in, feeling the cold emptiness behind. Slowly, Asher said, if you pull all at once, the clay screams. Samira rolled her fingers, releasing crumbs. She felt a leather edge. Her heart pounded in her throat. Nahum held her breath, afraid the air itself would betray her. A grain of sand fell inside like a tiny bell. Asher smiled slightly. When the truth answers, even silence has a voice. She pulled slowly. Asher, Samira whispered, what if there is nothing? Then we go back through the well roll. But if there is, my daughter Nineveh will learn to tremble at the right name. So pull slow down, Asher. I can feel the leather getting stuck at the edges. I breathe and spin. The clay comes loose when the hand doesn't fight. The stairs creaked. Below, the palace courtyard was sparsely lit by torches. Samira pulled again. The notebook yielded a finger, then another. Nahum held her daughter's hand. The three of them stood still, listening to the roundabout move through the narrow corridor. In the main hall, the king broke the peace. Enough. Silence. The stranger. The captain inclined his head. Do you want us to arrest him now? Silence first. Arrests later. I don't want a sermon in the squares. Zen men to the street corners. If he speaks, no one will hear him. The messenger ran off. In the streets, Nah's name was still prominent. Vendors whispered. Potters stopped their wheels and women peered over their veils. Malik woke early, decided to look for the prophet, and left without telling his father. If the notebook falls, we lose everything, Asher whispered. He won't fall, Samira said. He wants to get out. You really do, Nahum murmured. With one last twist, the leather came free from the crack. It was heavy with dust. Samira hugged the find. Asher smiled with his eyes. You get off first. I'll follow. Don't make fun of your feet. At the south gate, Nahum washed his face and lifted his head. The Lord weighs the nations. Nineveh stands firm, but the weight does not lie. A man in an apron warned. The guards are looking for your shadow. Shadow is not the owner of the sun, replied Nahum. 2 soldiers came, then for more. An officer said through clenched teeth, when I raise my hand, cover his mouth. A Vindicor approached Nahum. Speak loudly, prophet. Today my grape is worth more than my fear. People, said Nahum, the land can no longer bear silence. The blood it has received cries out against us. Mal came out from behind the jars. Let him talk, I want to hear it too. A date seller lifted her basket. Whoever silences a man of God has no hunger for justice. The officer raised his hand. 2 potters pushed a cart between the prophet and the guards. The wheel became a low wall. A fisherman planted his oar in front of the shields. Nobody here covers their mouths with iron, shouted the saleswoman. Leave, said the officer. The king's orders. Let the king listen, replied the wine grower. Today the square belongs to the people. On the stairs, Samira descended backward, notebook clutched. She hid in the shadows. A guard passed so close that the smell of burning leather lingered in the air. Asher pointed to the fig tree in the outer courtyard. Up to there, quickly, without running. On the throne, the counselor spoke softly. Lord, silencing a prophet does not put out a fire. It only covers the embers. I want streets without sermons. The king growled. I'll sort out the rest later. The rest usually come back through the door we closed. In the square, the officer advanced. 3 soldiers followed suit. The winemaker tripped over the cart and fell but caught the first man's leg. The fisherman slammed his oar into the ground. Malik spread his arms between Nahum and the spears. No. The officer grabbed the boy by the collar. The square cheered. The vendor threw the basket. The dates rolled and 2 soldiers slipped. Potters blew their whistles and others came with planks and ropes. Stay away, boy, said Nahum. Only if you promise to say more, Malik replied. I will speak until the wind takes me away, said the prophet. Under the fig tree, Asher opened the notebook. Clear lines, orders, names, dates, accounts of nights of blood, a page with a broken royal seal. Here it is. Nahum, the order to close the well and silence the mothers with the name of the scribe and the mark of the ring. Nahum clenched his fist. Then we didn't dream. We were accomplices. Truth heals when it comes out whole, said Asher. If we take this to the people, they will understand why the earth is crying, said Samira. First we get out alive, Asher replied. Then we choose the square. The officer drew his sword. Final warning. Whoever protects the stranger will answer to the king. An unveiled woman took a step. Then right. The people who are truly hungry responded to soldiers advanced. The oar banged, the cart creaked. Malik grabbed the officer's arm. The blow was blunt, but the winemaker thrust his body in front. The blade scraped against the skin without depth. It's not your business, brother, said the vine dresser. Today, my gripe is courage. Nahum raised his voice above the tumult. The Lord knows those who trust in him. He is good, a refuge in times of trouble. The guards hesitated. The square murmured like a chant. A man wept. The saleswoman took Moloch's hand. Stay close to me, little one. Today fear has a back. At the palace, a message arrived. Sir, the people form a wall around the prophet. Bring more men, said the king. I want the square empty. If we increase the force, the scream will increase, said the counselor. I prefer shouting to fire, replied the king, but his hand trembled. Asher tucked the notebook under his tunic. You, Samira, take this to the lame potter's house near Kill 15. No one searches his door. And you, I'll get the other scrolls. If they stop me, I'll buy time. You take the truth to become a voice. The soldiers tried to advance in a line, but they crashed into the cart, the oar, and the planks. The officer signaled, and two ran around the back to close off the side street. The vendor blew a hidden whistle. Women emerged from the doors with ropes and empty baskets forming a circle. Malik laughed involuntarily. It looks like a game of rings. It's a circle of living people, said the winemaker. Nahum prayed briefly and spoke calmly. I have not come to raise city against city. I have come to remind you that the Lord weighs all hands. The officer pointed his sword. Enough sweet talk. The throne rules here at the top. Another message. A scribe was seen near the courtyard of the fig trees. He appeared to be carrying something. Follow him, said the king. If there are any papers, burn them. Papers burn, names don't. The counselor whispered. In the throne room, the king ran his hand through his beard, feeling the weight of years he had pretended not to see. He remembered a long ago winter when the river flooded and no one wept because the order was to celebrate. The silence of that night now returned like a trapped bird. If he let the stranger speak, he would lose face. If he silenced him by force, he might gain an enemy that cannot be trapped. Memory, he took a deep breath as if diving and decided to descend to see for himself. Samira ran through the alleys, her notebook clutched to her chest. Behind her, two guards turned the corner. Hiram stumbled and stood up. Asher disappeared behind low walls. In the square, the officer took another step. His sword flashed. May stood still. Malik held his breath. The vine dresser spread his arms. The fisherman raised his oar. The people gathered in a circle. The torches flickered. Last order, the officer shouted. Stand back, final warning, said the winemaker. Nowadays no one carries a prophet like a sack of flour. Silence fell heavily. From the north, a guard's trumpet sounded. The officer looked at the gate and saw dust. Reinforcements were arriving. Nahum took a deep breath. He looked at Malik, the saleswoman, the wine grower, the fisherman, the potters. If they take me, the word remains. If they listen to me, the word grows. The officer made to move forward. Malik pointed to the back street and shouted, Look. Everyone turned their heads for a moment. Time held its ground. Is the king coming to the square, and will he himself hear what he tried to silence? He got down from the royal chariot Asher, and the square fell silent. Then the city began to listen. Samira, now we need to finish what we started. Afternoon was shining brightly over Nineveh, while the king continued to the square. Samira and Asher made their way to the main temple where massive columns supported the roof like ancient tree trunks. Harun watched over the narrow street. The wind carried fine dust and Asher's lamp smelled of old oil. Why here? Oh, dust, because the city's memory lives where it kneels, said the scribe. The courtyard was nearly empty. Two priests discussed the price of incense. An apprentice washed a bronze basin. Asher pointed to the bases of the columns worn by the touch of many hands. Stories that don't want to be read fall to the ground, he said. Look for cracks, lines, stones that don't fit together. Kneeling, they felt the cold stone. Asher tilted the flame and revealed nearly invisible scratches. Samira blew away the dust. Marks appeared like veins. Letters. He murmured, water and patience, said Asher. He wiped it with a wet cloth. The lines grew. They were spiral bands, inviting the eye to descend. Read with me, Samira. Brought her face closer. We swore with a blade under the moon that the river would drown out the cry of the vanquished. She stopped. Continue, the old man asked. We sealed the north gate with the blood of 5 foreign children so that no enemy could enter without first fearing our arm. The column tells what the city did not want to hear, said Asher. Hiram entered anxious. Do you find anything? We found packs, said the scribe. On another base the lines were deeper. The temple accepts the blood of warriors and also of innocents if it brings victory. Who wrote it? Odas Samir. Someone I didn't want to forget, said Asher. The apprentice approached. Can I help bring more water? Replied the scribe. In another column, when the king trembled because of the foreigner, we closed the well where the mothers cried out and covered the stones with dancing. Was there another before Nahum? Said Samira. There have always been voices. Asher replied. Some die, others come with the wind of God. Footsteps echoed. A priest stepped forward, frowning. Who scratches the base? Nobody scratches, said Asher. We just wipe away the dust. Stone doesn't talk, growled the man. Sometimes he talks, said Samira when he left. Asher lowered his voice. There is an inscription we never finish reading. They say that whoever finishes it trembles. They went to the eastern column. The flame licked the stone. Read slowly, said the old man. We built Nineveh on blood covenants. If we break our vows, the city will tremble like a man with a fever. If we keep them, guilt will eat us up like a hidden worm, and the river will carry away the names, but the earth will not forget. Asher completed. So that's it, said Hiram. The curse is written in stone. That is why Nahum burns, replied the scribe. A distant trumpet pierced the air. What shall we do, Oda Samira? We will give voice to the stone, said Asher. She noticed fresh scratches as if someone had tried to erase them. They wanted to keep quiet. They were silent for a while. Silence is tiring. In the side tank were broken scrolls and tablets. Asher took out a clay tablet with seals. 3 vows on the night of the dark moon. He showed the signs, the same as the rescued notebook. Paper and stone speak the same language, said Hiram, and the tongue is blood. The apprentice brought a jug. If I talk, I'll lose my place, he whispered. If you keep silent, you will lose your soul, said Asher. The last column was missing next to the altar. Samira kneeling past the cloth. The letters appeared trembling. If unjust blood supports the house falls when God blows. The end, asked Asher. If the city dances on bones, the ground catches the dance and knocks the dancers down. And the warning, the old man insisted, when the word of the Lord comes, do not blame the river or the foreigner. Search for the vows of blood and you will see why the walls tremble. It is said, concluded Asher. The temple has confessed. The king will deny it. Hiram grumbled. You can deny the mouth. You can't deny the stone. The priest returned with 2 guards. The visit is over. The temple is closed. We went out, said Asher, and got dust in our eyes. On the steps, Samira took one last look at the bases. They walked down the shadowy street. The apprentice hesitated and followed. If we tell, there will be fury, said Hiram, and he heals anyone who wants to, Asher replied. They'll say, we lied, said Samira. We will show you the stone, said the scribe. Another trumpet sounded like a distant sea. The city took a shallow breath. If the city shakes, who will be left standing? She asked. Whoever releases the vows, said Asher. What if the king calls us? Said the apprentice. We will go with the truth, replied the scribe. They stopped in the shadow of a low house. Asher opened his hands as if handing over something invisible. Every step now weighs on the ground that remembers in the hallway. The smell of incense mingled with dust. Samira thought of the mothers at the well and felt a knot in her throat. Why record on the columns? He asked. Because the column doesn't travel, said Asher. It's a secret in plain sight. Everyone sees it. No one reads it. They passed a niche with offerings. Hiram touched a bracelet and stepped back. I gave you one just like it when your sister was born. The weight was in the vote. Father, said Samira from a crack in the plaster. Another rude phrase appeared. If there is no soldier, a boy will be taken. How far does the hunger for victory go? She murmured. Until it tears your soul apart, Asher replied. A young guard came. The temple closes. We've already left, said the scribe. The boy looked at the shine of the letters. My brother disappeared during the flood summer. There are names the river doesn't take, said Samira. The guard nodded and left ahead. A lighter stone had writing on the edge. We win, and we lose together. Sometimes the truth escapes the victor's hand, said Asher. A bell rang. Hiram sighed. The square is boiling. That's better, said the scribe. And while you look over there, we look over here. As he left, the sun painted the copper temple. The apprentice took a deep breath. If I speak, I will be expelled, and if you keep quiet, you will be trapped inside, said Asher. They crossed an alley. Weavers were coming with bolts of wool. Did you hear the prophet? Asked one. We heard the speakers, said Samira. And what did they say? That we dance on bones, the scribe said, and the dance will exact a price. The loom cannot stop, said the eldest. You don't need to stop, Samira said. You need to change the pace. At the corner of the fig tree, Asher drew 3 marks on the ground with charcoal. 3 votes, 3 columns, the same wound. When the people see, they will understand. And when the throne asks, said Hiram, we will respond with the voice of the holy house itself, said Asher, and we will summon the king to listen. A cold gust almost blew out the lamp. There are days when God moves the curtains, said the scribe. The apprentice quickened his pace. If they catch us, truth has thorns, said Samira. But it has a guide. Who guides the memory that woke up? They stopped for a moment, hearing trumpets in the distance, like the crashing of the sea. The city is short of breath, said Hiram. Because the ground woke up, replied Asher. Shall we come back tomorrow and read aloud? The boy asked. Tomorrow and every day, said the scribe. Stones don't change, but people do. God sustain us now. So let's break it down, Asher, and see if Nineveh learns to tremble for the right reason. So let's break it down, Asher, and see if Nineveh learns to tremble for the right reason. Breaking a lie is harder than knocking down a wall. Samira night had already fallen over the city when the king returned from the tumult in the square. He climbed the palace stairs without speaking to anyone. 2 guards accompanied him to the door of his chamber, but he dismissed them both with a curt gesture. The flames of the lamps flickered in the corridor, and silence seemed to follow him like a shadow. Inside the royal chamber, luxury brought no rest. Colorful tapestries depicted past victories, lions slain, rivers conquered. But the king's eyes were blurry. He lay down, but sleep would not come. When he finally fell asleep, his mind opened in torment. He dreamed of walls cracking like dry bread. Each stone broke loose and fell on the soldiers, crushing shields and chariots. Then a huge river covered the gates, sweeping away entire markets. The people screamed, but the current carried them away mercilessly. Finally, flames rose through the streets, and the throne itself burned with red fire. The king screamed and woke in a sweat. "No, this can't be," he muttered, rubbing his face. He called a terrified servant. "Bring the priests. I want double the sacrifices. I want the blood of bulls and lambs on every altar." Soon the temple courtyard filled with smoke. Animals were brought in, drums beat, and priests chanted. The king watched with empty eyes. Yet the more the smell of burning flesh rose, the emptier he felt. "Your Majesty, the gods will listen," said one of the priests. "Will they hear?" The king repeated, his voice bitter. "Because I only hear silence." He returned to his room and tried to sleep again. Again the dreams came. This time they were of stone columns bending like reeds. The waters of the Tigris flooded the corridors, and invisible hands erased the names of the kings engraved on the tablets. The throne was empty, and a distant voice echoed. "The earth demands an answer." He woke with a start. He called another servant. "More sacrifices. I want 100 lambs before dawn." The boy ran in terror. In the courtyard the crowd watched the smoke rise like mist. They whispered among themselves. "The king fears dreams." Malik, who was peeking behind a column, whispered to a woman, "My father says that blood does not deceive the earth." "Your father is right, boy," she replied. Inside the palace, the elderly counselor dared to speak. "Lord, we have already sacrificed enough for an entire generation. The people ask why there is such a rush." "Because I don't sleep," the king shouted. "Because I see walls falling, rivers swallowing, fire devouring." He fell to his knees, hiding his face in his hands. His breathing was shallow, like that of a man who has run miles. "Your Majesty," the counselor said compassionately, "perhaps it's not gods who demand more sacrifices. Perhaps it's guilt that demands remembrance." The king stood up, trembling. "Shut up, old man. Don't talk to me about guilt. Bring more oxen, more lambs. Fill the river with blood if necessary." The counselor sighed, but obeyed. Servants rushed forward. The ground was stained red, but nothing changed within the royal heart. On the third night, the torment was worse. He dreamed he was walking alone down a deserted street. The windows rattled without wind. The ground opened up, and subterranean voices rose in lamentation. The walls leaned over him. The king tried to run, but his legs gave way. The fire grew until it touched the sky. He cried out the names of all the gods, but no one answered. He woke with tears on his face. For the first time, he didn't call for a servant. He walked to the porch. The river flowed silently, and the moon seemed to hide behind the clouds. "If no god listens to me, who will listen to the king of Nineveh?" he murmured. At the far end of the square, Nah was still preaching. His voice, carried by the early morning wind, reached the distant balcony. The king did not understand the words, but his heart trembled. He called the captain of the guards. "I want reports on that voice. I want to know every syllable," he says. "What if it's the voice of God, Your Majesty?" the captain ventured. The king looked at the horizon with empty eyes, and the silence became heavy. "And if so, then how can we silence something that not even walls can stop?" "So, how can we silence something that not even walls can stop?" "Perhaps the king will find out by trying, Your Majesty." Dawn brought a heavy air over Nineveh. The market was slow to open, and even the birds seemed to avoid the squares. Guards marched stiffly through narrow streets. The people whispered. They said the order had finally been given. Nahum would be arrested. Malik heard the news from a neighbor and ran toward the square. He found Nahum surrounded by soldiers. The prophet stood serenely motionless. He didn't resist when the ropes bound his arms. He simply raised his eyes to the sky just as they tie me down. "This city is tied down too," he said in a clear voice. A soldier became angry. "Shut up, man. Shut my mouth, but don't shut the wind," replied Nah. The crowd began to stir. A woman shouted, "Leave him alone. He only talks the king's order," the captain shouted, pushing past the onlookers. Malik tried to get closer but was pulled away by his father. "Son, we can't fight spears." "But he's not afraid," the boy protested. Nahum was led through the streets to the palace gates. The stones echoed with each step. Those who watched felt a strange weight on their chests, as if the prison were an open wound in the city. Underground, the prophet was thrown into a dark cell. Chains fastened to the floor bound his feet. The guard locked the iron door and laughed. "Now your voice no longer echoes." Nahum looked firmly. "It already echoes within you." That night, 3 soldiers were assigned to watch him. They sat by the door, trying to ward off the uneasiness. On the other side, they heard Nahum muttering prayers. His voice seemed to penetrate stone and iron. "He doesn't get tired," said one of the soldiers. "It seems like he's talking to someone invisible," commented another. "Maybe he will," said the third. Lowering his eyes, Nahum raised his voice. "The Lord is a refuge in times of trouble." He will not abandon those who trust in him. The first soldier knocked on the fence. "Go away, be silent," you answered, "Nahum, if you can silence your conscience." The men looked at each other. One of them broke out in a cold sweat. "I've never heard a prisoner speak like that," he confessed. "Neither do I," said the companion. "It seems the walls repeat every word." The next morning, the captain came to inspect. "Are you quiet, D?" he asked. "No, sir," a guard replied. "He talks non-stop, then cover his mouth." The captain ordered. They entered the cell with a cloth. They tied it over Nahum's mouth, but the prophet's eyes burned like embers. Even in silence, he seemed to speak louder. The soldiers retreated. "What eyes are those?" one of them murmured. "Eyes of those who do not fear," replied the other. Nahum closed his eyes and prayed silently. The guards felt a chill as if someone invisible were there. One of them dropped his sword. At night, Malak managed to sneak to the dungeon entrance. He called softly through a crack. "Prophet, are you alive?" From within came the muffled but firm answer, "I live, boy. The word of the Lord is not bound." Malak smiled, even with tears in his eyes. "And I knew they couldn't shut you up." The captain suddenly appeared and pulled the boy away. "Get out of here, little mouse," he shouted. But the boy turned and cried out, "You can lock up the body, but his voice is already in the city." The captain was speechless. The soldiers looked at each other. Even in their hardened hearts, something seemed to be stirring in the cell. Nahum opened his eyes. He felt the night wind blowing through the small opening in the ceiling, and he murmured again like someone sowing seeds, "Whoever trusts in walls will fall with walls. Whoever trusts in the Lord will stand." Outside, one of the guards placed his hand on the cold stone and whispered, "He speaks, and I feel as if it were me." The captain gritted his teeth. "Enough. Tomorrow, I will put an end to this." "But how can we put an end to what has already started to grow inside us?" "But how can we put an end to what has already started to grow inside us?" "Only with truth, Captain, and truth cannot be killed with a sword." While Nahum remained imprisoned in the dungeons, Samira walked the city's poorest streets. The rescued notebook was still hidden under cloth in her home, and the inscriptions on the temple columns burned in her memory. But something was still missing. Living voices to confirm what the paper and stone said. On the outskirts, she found a group gathered near an abandoned oven. They were foreigners, their faces scarred by hunger and dust. A dark-skinned old man was telling something to the children who listened in silence. Samira approached slowly. "Peace be with you, elder, peace." He laughed bitterly. "There's no peace left for us." A woman stood up. Her eyes were red. "Who are you, young lady?" "I am the daughter of a potter. I seek to discover the truth that the city buried." The old man sighed deeply and showed his scarred hands. "I came from a village in the north. Soldiers came at night. They burned houses, took men, buried children in mud. They said it was the king's order to show strength." Samira swallowed dryly, "And they survived. Some ran away. I ran into the woods and lived in hiding until the scars cooled." Another woman approached. "I'm from a village by the river. Our wells were poisoned. My sister died of thirst even though she was surrounded by water." The children surrounded her, clutching her tunic. Their eyes spoke of fear that should not be felt at such a young age. Samira closed her eyes and remembered the inscription. "We sealed the north gate with the blood of 5 foreign children." A shiver ran through his body. "Everything I found written. Now you confirm it with your life." The old man nodded. "It's not just words. It's the blood that still cries out from the ground." A young man with a thin beard showed a piece of wood marked with symbols. "It was from my village. I carry it to remind me that it wasn't a dream." Samira felt the tears fall. "The prophet Nahum said that the earth has memories. Now I see that the earth has faces too." The group moved closer. "Speak for us, Potter's daughter," the river woman pleaded. "If the city would listen, perhaps it wouldn't pretend to sleep." At that moment, Malak came running up panting. "Samira, the guards say they'll silence Nah forever. My father forbade me from returning to the dungeons, but I listened. They're planning to do it tomorrow morning." Samira clenched her fists. "So, we need to show that his voice isn't just his. It's also for those here who suffered." The old man held her arm. "If you speak, you will be hunted like we were." "I'd rather be hunted with truth than live with lies," Samira replied. Asher appeared on the street, leaning on his staff. "I can see what's happening. The written word has met the living word. Together, they will no longer be silent." Samira showed the survivors. "Here are the witnesses. They are the stones that cry out," the scribe sighed. "So Nah's prophecy is now fulfilled. The city bears a guilt it cannot hide. The blood of the innocent is heavier than the walls." Malak looked at Samira, startled. "What if the king finds out?" "Then the storm of his dreams will come true," said Asher. The old foreigner raised his hands. We no longer ask for revenge. We only ask that they know what was done, that the names do not die with us." Samira looked at every scarred face, every scar, every childlike look. The weight of the prophecy fell upon her like a stone. "Your blood cries out, and I will not be silent." Asher nodded, his eyes welling up. "So the time has come to decide. Hide again or reveal." Malak held her hand. "Samira, if you speak, the city may turn against you. Malik, if I don't speak, the earth itself will turn against us all." The wind blew hard, kicking up dust from the street. The survivors cowered, but their eyes glowed like hidden embers. Samira took a deep breath. looked up, and said in a firm voice, "Let us bring this truth to the people. Let Nineveh choose whether to dance on bones or learn to weep with them." Asher looked up at the sky, and silence fell over the group. Malik shivered but didn't let go of Samira's hand. What if upon hearing the blood of the innocent the entire city begins to truly tremble? What if upon hearing the blood of the innocent the entire city begins to truly tremble? Then it's because judgment has already knocked on the door, Malik. The following days were uneasy in Nineveh. The streets seemed to whisper in street corners. People talked about the inscriptions hidden in the columns, the notebook taken from the palace, the stories told by survivors of massacres. Rumors spread faster than the gods, and Samira's name was already beginning to appear on everyone's lips as someone who had dared to unite the memory of the stone with the memory of the people. In the palace, the king paced back and forth. His dreams wouldn't leave him, and the weight of the city weighed heavily on his shoulders. But he wasn't alone. The most influential priests were summoned to the inner chamber. They entered with serious faces, embroidered robes, and eyes that hid fear. "Your Majesty," said the high priest, "this foreign voice and these rumors in the streets are eroding the people's confidence." "It's not just rumors," the king replied nervously. "There are records, there are crossed-out columns, there are people repeating the same stories." Another priest raised his voice. "Then we need to shut all this up before it escalates." The king passed his hand over his forehead. "We have already arrested Nahum, but his word continues to echo. What else can I do?" The high priest bowed. "Eliminate those who carry evidence. The prophet is only the flame, but there are those who harbor embers." The king looked suspicious. "Who?" "A young woman named Samira and an elderly scribe named Asher. They feed the flame with documents and memories." The monarch hesitated. "Do you want me to have a young woman and an old man killed?" "Better that than losing the throne," the priest whispered. Silence fell heavily. Finally the king nodded. "Do what is necessary." That night, Asher and Samira met at the fig tree in the potter's quarter. The scribe's face was tired, but his eyes were steady. "The priests hunt us now." "I expected it," Samira replied. "The truth has stirred where they kept golden silence." Haram, her father, looked around uneasily. "We shouldn't be walking together. There are eyes on every corner." "That's precisely why we must walk together," said Asher. "If they catch me alone, the scrolls die with me. If they are with us, the truth lives on." Suddenly, Malik came running. "Guards, they're coming down the alley." There was no time. Torches appeared. Shadows advanced. Samira and Malik ran, but Asher fell behind, tripping over his staff. "Go," he shouted. "Save the rolls." Two soldiers grabbed him. One of them raised his sword. Samira looked back, but Haram pulled her back. "No, if you come back, we'll all die." Asher's scream echoed through the street, and the metallic sound of the blade cutting through the air marked the end. The old scribe fell, but his last words still lingered in the air. "Keep the memory." Samira clutched the scrolls to her chest, tears streaming down her face. Malik sobbed beside her. Aram closed his eyes in pain. Behind, the priests watched from a distance. Satisfied, the high priest said to the captain, "One has already fallen silent. Now the girl is missing." The next morning, rumors spread through the city. Some said the elderly scribe had been killed by robbers. Others knew the truth, but remained silent out of fear. Samira, however, did not remain silent. She met with the survivors she had met and showed them the scrolls. "Ash had died, so this wouldn't die," she said, holding up the scrolls. "We won't hide it." People looked at each other. Some wept. Others clenched their fists. Malik, his voice still trembling, added, "My father said that those who remain silent are accomplices. I don't want to be an accomplice." Samira took a deep breath. "Then let the city know. The columns speak, the notebook speaks, and the blood of the innocent still demands an answer." Back in the palace, the king received the report of Ash's death. He expected to feel relief, but the weight on his chest only grew. That night, he dreamed again of crumbling walls and rivers flooding the corridors. Nahum's voice seemed to blend with Ash's cry. "Keep the memory." The king woke up covered in sweat. The priests were waiting for him. "That leaves the girl," they said. "The people must forget her." The king hesitated but finally shook his head. "Do whatever it takes." In the potter's quarter, Samira hid the scrolls in a crack in the wall. Malik helped her and Haram guarded the door. She breathed deeply as if carrying the weight of many. "Father, if they come after me, don't let them take the scrolls. Daughter, if they come, I will hide them in the clay of the oven. Not even the king will find them." "It's not enough to hide," Malik said. "We need to show it, and we will show it," Samira replied, "even if it cost us our lives." The wind blew hard, blowing out the lamp. Silence fell heavily on the house. Footsteps sounded on the street, and shadows moved before the door. Samira clutched her heart and looked at her father and Malik. "They're here. They came for us. But who will be silenced first? Us or the king himself in his dreams? But who will be silenced first? US or the king himself in his dreams? Perhaps none will be silent, Samira. When the heavens speak, even the throne bows." The day dawned with thick clouds over Nineveh. The sun seemed to have hidden, and the air carried the scent of rain even before the first drop fell. In the markets, vendors gazed at the horizon and saw the sky weigh like iron. Malik tugged at his friend's tunic. "Have you seen the river, Samira?" It looks bigger than yesterday. The tiger grows when the sky cries without stopping. But today he doesn't cry. Today he screams, murmured the boy. The first clap of thunder tore through the city's silence. Men looked up, women closed their windows, and children ran indoors. The clouds swirled like whirlwinds. The wind stirred dust in the streets, knocking over pots and tearing fabric from tents. In the palace, the king got up in a hurry. Call the priests, bring oxen, lambs, pigeons. I want double the sacrifices now. The priests came running, but their eyes were restless. One of them spoke in a low voice. Your Majesty, we have already given too much. The people are tired and the granaries are beginning to empty. Don't talk to me about granaries, the king roared. What matters is the fury that descends from the sky. From the top of the walls, soldiers watched the Tigris River rise until it reached the banks. Trees uprooted by the current floated past. With each clap of thunder, the gods' hearts trembled. In the temple, Samira watched hidden behind a column. She saw the priests sacrifice endless animals. Blood flowed, but the sky did not calm. On the contrary, the wind grew stronger and the rain fell with the weight of stone. It's not working, Malik murmured beside him. It's not the blood they ask for that will change what's written, Samira replied. People filled the squares, looking up at the sky. A woman shouted, why don't our gods answer? A man replied, because the foreigners' gods spoke louder. The crowd began to murmur. Some ran in fear, others screamed, and many wept. The sense that something greater than walls and armies was coming gripped the city. In the palace, the king was tearing his hair out. Sacrifice more. If necessary, even offer my own horses. A priest fell to his knees. Your Majesty, nothing can stop what is coming. Not blood, not gold, not walls. The king struck him with his staff. Shut up. I don't allow cowards in my presence. But even the proudest priests were pale. The thunder shook the temple as if the columns were moving. The altar fire went out with every gust of wind, forcing the men to relight it again and again. Samira looked at Malik. They tremble more than we do, because they know they've been lied to all their lives. The boy replied. Amidst the storm, Nahum's cry echoed from the dungeons. No one knew how, but his voice pierced the walls. The Lord is against Nineveh. Who can endure his indignation? The people near the palace fell to their knees in fear. Some clung to the doors, others covered their ears. The guards watching Nahum recoiled as if the voice had been accompanied by thunder in the royal hall. The king fell to his knees. Gods, answer me. Why did you leave me alone? But there was no answer, only the rain pounding on the roof and the wind moaning through the cracks. The elderly counselor dared to speak. Your Majesty, perhaps it is not they who have fallen silent. Perhaps it is another god who has decided to speak. Shut up, the king shouted, covering his ears. I don't want to hear that name. The storm raged again. Lightning streaked across the sky, illuminating the entire city as if it were day. The river overflowed, flooding low-lying streets. People ran, trying to save children, animals, and what little they had. Samira hugged Malik, protecting him from the rain. It's not just rain, boy, it's judgment. And if we don't stop hiding the truth, you'll drown it all. Hiram appeared, soaking wet. Daughter, we must choose. Either we tell the people everything we know, or we will be guilty of silence. You're right, Dad. There's no more time to wait. Thunder shook the walls and chunks of stone fell like sand. The priest screamed, trying to hold the altar steady, but nothing worked. The king stood up, his eyes wild. If heaven opens against me, then I will bring human sacrifices if necessary. The priests turned pale. Your Majesty, this is madness. It's madness to lose the crown, the king shouted. Samira clutched the scrolls to her chest. Malik wept in fear. Harun looked up at the dark sky and whispered, perhaps the throne will fall before the wall does. A bolt of lightning illuminated the entire palace. And for a moment, it seemed as if the sky was splitting open over Nineveh. Samira, if the king himself defies heaven, who can save this city from ruin? Samira, if the king himself defies heaven, who can save this city from ruin? Perhaps there is no salvation for those who choose to close their ears. Malik, but there is still the courage to speak the truth. The streets of Nineveh were covered in mud and debris. The previous night's storm had left deep scars, destroyed houses, cracked walls, families mourning their losses. The people murmured that no sacrifice had been enough to stop what came from the heavens. Samira walked with firm steps, still clutching the scrolls hidden in her tunic. But she was soon surrounded by armed guards. The captain, in a dry voice, announced, "The king calls you daughter of a potter." Malik tried to rush to his defense. "Don't take her. She hasn't hurt anyone." But Harun held him back. "Noble, there are times when one must face it alone." The guards dragged Samira into the palace. The tall doors burst open and she was thrown into the hall before the throne. The king stood there, his eyes weary and his crown askew as if the weight of his own head were crushing it. Beside him, the priests watched in silence, their faces rigid, but their hands trembling. "Here's the girl who spreads rumors," the king said, trying to sound firm. "They say you have papers, stories, and accusations against my house." Samira looked up. "These are not rumors, Your Majesty. They are memories. The land wrote them. The columns preserved them. The survivors confirmed them." The high priest laughed. but his voice cracked. "A girl's words don't knock down walls. They are not my words," Samira replied firmly. "They are the words of the blood that still cries out." The king struck his staff on the ground. "You tiny. Speak then. I want to hear from your mouth what you dare say against the throne of Nineveh." Samira took a deep breath. The entire room held its breath. "The royal line is stained with the blood of thousands. Massacres have been committed in the name of your crowns. Children buried alive, wells poisoned, villages burned. It is written in parchment, engraved in stone, kept in dreams that not even you can silence." The king shuddered. He remembered the nightmares that haunted him night after night. The priests exchanged looks of terror. "Liari," one of them shouted, "you want to destroy the city with your tongue." Samira turned to him. "You were the ones who destroyed it. You who danced on bones and said it was a party." A heavy silence fell over the room. The elderly counselor, who had remained silent until then, stepped forward. "Your Majesty." Her words fit with everything the foreigner announced. "Perhaps judgment will not come by chance." The king trembled with anger and fear. "Shut up, you old traitor." He pointed at Samira. "And you, do you dare accuse kings before the throne?" Samira took a step forward, even though she was chained. "I don't just accuse kings. I also accuse priests who traded truth for gold. I accuse walls that hid crimes. I accuse the silence that killed more than the sword." Thunder rumbled outside, shaking the hall's windows. The people gathered before the palace began to shout, demanding explanations. The echo of the storm seemed to confirm every word the young woman had said. The king put his hand to his chest. "So everything I saw in the visions was my fault, not only yours." "Your Majesty," Samira said firmly, "but your house led the dance over blood and judgment began because the cry reached heaven." The priests tried to interrupt, but the people outside were already murmuring loudly. The truth spoken in a clear voice passed through the doors like wind. Haram and Malik were in the crowd. The boy wide-eyed asked, "Dad, is she alone in there?" "He who speaks the truth is never alone," Haram replied. The king rose from the throne, his hands trembling. "If I admit it, I lose the crown. If I deny it, I fight against heaven." Samira raised her head. "It is not a crown that supports walls, Your Majesty. It is justice." Silence filled the hall. Even the priests seemed dwarfed by the young woman's words. Outside, another thunderclap resounded like a drum. The king gripped his staff tightly, his eyes welling up with tears. "What if I can't bear to hear anymore?" "Then, Your Majesty, you will hear from the mouth of God himself what you tried to keep from the mouth of a potter's daughter." "Then, Your Majesty, you will hear from the mouth of God himself what you tried to keep from the mouth of a potter's daughter." "If that is true, Samira, how will I bear the weight that is approaching?" The sky over Nineveh darkened like night in broad daylight. The wind roared between the walls and thunder echoed like war drums. With each gust, the palace towers shook. The people no longer ran simply out of fear of the storm. There were fires in the streets, flames bursting from houses struck by lightning, and the river overflowed, flooding alleys. Haram and Malik fought against the crowd that fled in despair. "Dad, where are we going?" the boy shouted. "Away from the palace's son. Whoever runs there runs to ruin." Inside the dungeons, Nahum was still imprisoned, but his voice, firm and clear, carried through the stone as if there were no bars. The guards, once haughty, now trembled. "Prophet, can't you see the city is burning?" asked one of them. "Yes, I see," Nahum replied. "But it burns because the Lord has already decreed. Your wound is incurable, Nineveh. Your end is near." The soldiers retreated in terror. One of them dropped his keys, but none dared free him. They were paralyzed between duty and fear of judgment. In the palace, the king looked out the window. He saw streets covered in water, rooftops on fire, and in the distance, the northern wall cracking as if it were made of clay. "No," he cried, tearing his clothes. "Everything we have built, everything we have saved is crumbling before my eyes." The high priest tried to hold him back. "Your Majesty, we must flee. Run away." The king pushed him. "Where do you run to when it's the sky that's chasing you?" The elderly counselor fell to his knees. "There is nowhere to go, sir. The Lord has already weighed down the city." Samira, still guarded by guards, was brought back to the hall when they saw her enter. The priests angrily accused her. It was this girl who brought wrath. Her words cursed the city. She raised her voice. "It wasn't me. It was your hands that shed innocent blood. Now the weight of justice has fallen, and there is no altar to support it." An earthquake shook the ground. Palace columns crumbled, and chunks of stone fell near the throne. The people still standing there screamed and fled, leaving the king alone, surrounded only by the priests and the young accuser. Nah, in the dungeons raised his voice again. "The Lord is jealous and avenging. Nineveh will not stand. The fire devours you. The waters surround you. The earth opens its mouth against you." The guards knelt down weeping. "He speaks as if the sky itself answered." Samira faced the king. "Now, do you see, Your Majesty? It is not my mouth that condemns. It is the mouth of God himself." The king fell to his knees, trembling. "If it's true, then there's no hope for me." "There are those who regret it," Samira said, "but your house has already chosen to dance on bones, and the dance is over." Another clap of thunder shook the heavens. The river surged through the palace gates. Soldiers and servants ran, leaving everything behind. The palace, once filled with pride and gold, lay empty as a ruin. Hiram and Malik, watching from afar, saw crowds leaving the city. The boy held his father's hand. "Dad, is this the end?" "It's the weight of justice, son." In the dungeons, Nahum spoke one last time, and his voice sounded like a final sentence. "Your wound is incurable. All who hear of your fall will clap their hands over you, for upon whom has your iniquity not continually passed?" The echo rang through the walls, reaching even the streets. The people wept, but some also rejoiced, remembering the pain the city had caused them. Samira closed her eyes, feeling her heart heavy. The Lord has fulfilled what he promised. The king, kneeling amidst broken stones, looked up at the young woman. "What if there is still a chance to save at least my name?" "Your Majesty, how can we save the name of someone who wrote his own history in blood?" "Though, Your Majesty, how can we save the name of someone who wrote his own history in blood?" If I cannot save my name, Samira, then I will at least try to save my crown." The roar of the Tigris's waters echoed like 1,000 charging horses. The flood broke dyes, flooded streets, and battered the city gates. The walls, once the pride of Nineveh, began to dissolve like clay in the current. Screams echoed from all sides. Hiram and Malik were among the desperately running crowd. The father pulled his son by the hand, trying to lead him away from the gates. But at every turn, destruction overtook them. Houses collapsed, markets went up in flames. Soldiers dropped their weapons to save their lives. Inside the palace, the king shouted orders, but his voice no longer found an echo. "Guards, defend the east gate. Reinforce the north wall." One of the captains replied with a dark look, "There is no wall to defend, sir. The water took everything." The king fell to his knees, banging his staff against the ground. "Then we will resist inside the palace," but even the guards were tired. Some murmured among themselves, others stared at the doors as if expecting the enemy to enter. Samira, still under guard, was pushed into the throne room. The priests tried to convince the king, "Your Majesty, if we offer Samira to the people, perhaps their fury will turn against her and not against us." "No," cried the king, "it is no longer a young girl who threatens me, but heaven itself." At that moment, a roar shook the ground. The main gate burst open with the force of the waters and the armies surging from outside. Enemy warriors poured in like a raging wave, scattering spears and fire. "They've arrived," a guard murmured, terrified. The king stood up, trying to lift the crown. "No, this is the invincible city. I'm king," but his own guard surrounded him. One of them took the crown from his head. "Forgive us, sir, but we would rather deliver you alive than die with you." The king stepped back, astonished. "Traitors, it was I who gave you Goldland power. It was you who also gave us to fire and water," replied the captain. They tied him with ropes, ignoring his screams. The priests fled, abandoning the empty throne. Nahum, still imprisoned in the dungeons, raised his voice one last time. "Thus the Lord fulfills what he promised. Nineveh, the stronghold of pride, falls like dust driven by the wind." Outside, Malik held his father's hand. "Dad, is the city over?" Hiram nodded, tears in his eyes. "It's over, son, but the truth remains forever." Samira watched in silence as the king was led to his enemies. His crown gleamed in the lightning, but it no longer carried the weight of power, only of shame. Thunder ripped through the sky once more. The tigers continued to ravage the streets, and the walls surrendered to the current as if they had never existed. Samira looked at Malik and Hiram, and her voice was low but firm. The city fell because it forgot the blood of the innocents. The boy stared at her, still trembling. "And now, Samira, what will become of us without walls, without a king, without a crown? Now, Malik, we will see if there is anyone left capable of building his life on truth and not on lies. Now, Malik, all that remains is to live remembering that no city is invincible before God. But every life can be rebuilt when it is supported by the truth. But if all that's left is silence and smoke, Samira, how will the heart find the strength to carry on?" The sky over Nineveh was gray and heavy, shrouded in clouds that still carried the scent of the storm. Fire fueled by the wind consumed what remained of palaces, markets, and homes. Smoke rose like black mountains obscuring the moon. Where proud walls once stood, only scattered ruins lay like the broken teeth of a defeated giant. Samira stopped at the top of a hill. The heat from the fire reached her, searing the air and parching her throat. Malik Wary hugged her arm tightly, and Hiram walked behind, panting but not breaking stride. Other survivors followed in silence, each carrying only their own tears. Nynaeve Harun murmured harassingly, "Who could have imagined the city that seemed eternal has turned to dust before our eyes?" "That's what Nahum foretold," Samira replied. "It wasn't a man who tore down walls. It was the hand of God showing that no empire can be sustained by innocent blood." Malik looked up, his eyes filled with tears. The prophet, we never saw him again after the city began to crumble." Samira took a deep breath. "Perhaps the Lord has gathered him. Perhaps his mission ended when the word was fulfilled. But I still hear it," the boy said simply. "In here, as if it was speaking to me." The wind blew hard, and everyone felt a shiver. Amidst the sound of the flames, a firm voice seemed to echo, "Your wound is incurable. The city of warriors has fallen. The survivors looked at each other, some in fear, some in reverence. "It's not imagination," Hiram murmured. "It's judgment itself, echoing in the stones." Samira kept her eyes fixed on the flames that consumed the palace. "Look closely. One day our children will ask if Nineveh really existed, and we will have to say yes, but that it disappeared because it forgot the Lord." The group remained silent. The fire devoured columns and the waters of the Tigris carried away debris, mixing everything into a single cephala. Malik spoke softly but firmly. "So Nineveh will never return." "Never again," Samira replied. "The city that seemed invincible will be nothing more than a memory in the mouths of the people." Hiram approached his daughter and put his hand on her shoulder. "And us, what will become of us now?" "We will live," she said, "because life goes on for those who keep the truth in their hearts." The wind blew once more, and the echo of Naz's voice seemed to pierce the air. "The Lord is good, a refuge in the day of trouble. He knows those who trust in him." Samira closed her eyes and let the words comfort her. "He is no longer among us, but his message remains." The boy looked at her innocently. "So, Samira, is the end of Nineveh also the beginning of a new life for us?" "Yes, Malik. Because when a city dies in lies, God always opens the way for the people to learn to live in truth." The fall of Nineveh was not just the end of a mighty city, but the unmasking of a hardened heart. It was not the strength of enemy armies, nor the violence of the Tigris that sealed its ruin, but the corruption itself that grew within it. Pride, cruelty, and injustice were the invisible walls that rose against the living God, and not one stone upon another could remain standing when judgment came. Nahum's prophecy is not just a thing of the past. It continues to echo as a reminder for every generation. Human power is fragile, and no greatness built on blood and lies endures. We may try to silence our conscience as the kings of Nineveh tried to silence the prophet, but the voice of truth is never silenced. What we see in Nineveh is a mirror for our own choices. How often do we trust in wealth positions or walls of security, believing that nothing will reach us? How often do we close our ears to warnings, postpone repentance, and harbor the illusion that there will always be more time? Nineveh thought itself eternal, but it disappeared from history forever. The lesson remains. It is not strength that sustains, but justice. It is not gold that protects, but truth. Arrogance digs graves, but humility opens paths of life. The end of the city is a call for each of us to decide where we will build our foundations. May we not repeat the steps of Nineveh. May we learn while there is still time to rely on what is eternal, God's justice and mercy. For kingdoms fall, empires pass away, but the word of the Lord endures forever. If this story spoke to your heart, 2 other videos will appear on your screen featuring prophets who also witnessed God's judgment and mercy. Click subscribe to the channel and like. May the God who shook the gates of Nineveh and raised the banner of eternal justice speak to you too. Because sometimes the greatest revelation only comes when we realize that no human strength can withstand the Lord.